It was a cold spring morning in 1945. The city of Berlin lay in ruins beneath a darkened sky, its once majestic buildings reduced to rubble. The air was thick with smoke and the stench of war. Yet above it all, two of the most iconic warplanes in history dueled for control of the skies. A squadron of P-51 Mustangs, their sleek bodies glinting in the early morning sun, tore through the clouds above the crumbling city. Below, the unmistakable hum of Messerschmitt Bf-109 seconds cut through the air like a knife through the fog, their engines screaming as they dove in pursuit. The skies over Berlin were about to witness the clash of two titans, two aircraft, that would forever define the air battles of World War II. But this wasn't just a fight of machines. It was a contest of survival, of pride, and of a new world order emerging from the ashes of the old. For months, the Allies had relentlessly pounded the heart of Nazi Germany. And as the Third Reich teetered on the brink of collapse, the German Luftwaffe's finest pilots, flying the legendary Messerschmitt Bf-109, fought desperately to defend the skies over Berlin. But the Americans had brought with them something new, a weapon that would forever change the balance of power in the air: the P-51 Mustang. The Messerschmitt Bf-109 was the backbone of the Luftwaffe for much of World War II. Introduced in 1937, it quickly became the most feared fighter in Europe. With its sleek, compact design and powerful engine, the Bf-109 was more than just a machine. It was a symbol of German military might. Powered by the Daimler-Benz DB605 engine, the Bf-109 had a maximum speed of 398 miles per hour and a range that allowed it to perform long-range missions. It was an aircraft built for versatility, capable of excelling in a variety of roles. It served as a fighter, an interceptor, and even as a ground attack plane. The Bf-109's armament included a 20mm MG-151 over 20 cannon and two 7.92mm MG-17 machine guns, making it a deadly adversary in combat. In its early years, the Bf-109 proved nearly unbeatable. It was instrumental in the Battle of France and the Battle of Britain, and it gained a reputation for its agility, speed, and firepower. The aircraft's distinctive wing-mounted design and the forward-swept tail made it stand out in the skies, and its excellent climb rate allowed it to intercept enemy bombers and fighters with deadly efficiency. However, as the war progressed, the Bf-109 began to show its age. In the early days, its pilots were often the elite of the Luftwaffe, and their experience and skill made them a formidable force. But by 1945, Germany was no longer able to produce enough skilled pilots. Many of the veteran Luftwaffe squadrons had been wiped out, and replacements were rushed into combat, often with little training or experience. Moreover, the Bf-109's design, though innovative at the time, had limitations. The cockpit was cramped, which led to reduced visibility for the pilot, and the aircraft's landing gear often made for difficult takeoffs and landings, especially in the chaos of the final days of the war. These shortcomings were exacerbated by the shortage of fuel and parts, making it difficult for the Bf-109 to maintain its edge in the skies. Despite these challenges, the Bf-109 remained a formidable opponent. Even as the Allies ramped up their bombing campaigns and P-51 Mustangs dominated the skies, the Bf-109's pilots fought with unwavering determination, knowing that the defense of Berlin could very well be their last stand. As the German Luftwaffe scrambled to defend their homeland, the Bf-109 remained their most trusted weapon. But in the face of the P-51 Mustang, this once dominant fighter found itself facing a new kind of adversary, one that would push its limits and test the resilience of the pilots who flew it. The North American P-51 Mustang was a game-changer in the truest sense of the word. Originally conceived as a simple fighter for the British Royal Air Force in the early stages of World War II, it quickly evolved into the most effective long-range escort fighter of the war. The P-51's transformation was due in large part to the addition of the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, a decision that would radically enhance its performance and give the Allies a significant edge in the skies. The P-51 Mustang's top speed of 437 miles per hour and its impressive range of 1,650 miles meant it could escort bombers deep into enemy territory, well beyond the reach of other fighters. This was a breakthrough, as bombers previously had to fly without fighter escorts during long raids, leaving them vulnerable to German interceptors. With the P-51 Mustang, this vulnerability was eliminated, and Allied bombers could now operate with near impunity. Its armament, which included 6 .50 caliber Browning M2 machine guns, made the Mustang deadly in combat. The P-51's sleek aerodynamic design, combined with its ability to carry bombs if necessary, made it a versatile asset. The aircraft's longer fuselage and larger wings allowed for better maneuverability at high speeds, which made it deadly in dogfights. Additionally, the P-51's ability to climb quickly and engage German fighters like the Bf-109 made it the perfect weapon for ensuring that bombers could complete their missions with fewer losses. Pilots who flew the P-51 Mustang praised its incredible handling and firepower. Unlike many other aircraft of the time, the Mustang was stable at high speeds and had excellent visibility for the pilot, offering a significant advantage during dogfights. It was an aircraft that provided a level of confidence and control for its pilots, a stark contrast to the challenges faced by German fighter pilots in their aging Bf-109 seconds. The introduction of the P-51 Mustang into the European theater of World War II marked a turning point in the air war. The Allies had finally gained a weapon that could not only defend bombers, but also challenge the German fighters head-on. The Mustang's success was especially evident during the Battle of Berlin, where it played a critical role in neutralizing the Luftwaffe's defenses and ensuring that Allied bombers could carry out their devastating raids on the heart of Nazi Germany. Despite the Mustang's formidable advantages, it was not invincible. The Germans, having fought tooth and nail to maintain their grip on the skies, would not go down without a fight. And in the face of the P-51 Mustang, the Bf-109 pilots of the Luftwaffe would engage in one final desperate clash, a battle that would test both machines and men to their absolute limits. The Battle of Berlin, which took place in the final months of World War II, was one of the most significant and dramatic aerial confrontations between the Allies and the Germans. Berlin, the capital of Nazi Germany, was both a symbol of the Third Reich's strength and its impending collapse. The city had already suffered countless Allied bombings, and the Luftwaffe was stretched to its limits. With the Allies closing in on the city from all sides, the German pilots knew that the defense of Berlin was their last chance to turn the tide. On the Allied side, the 8th Air Force launched massive daylight bombing raids aimed at crippling Berlin's infrastructure and military capabilities. The heavy bombers B-17 Flying Fortresses and B-24 Liberators rained destruction on the city, dropping tons of explosives and incendiaries. But these bombers were not alone. P-51 Mustangs, having proven their worth as bomber escorts during previous missions, accompanied the raids, ensuring that German interceptors could not threaten the bombers with impunity. For the German Luftwaffe, the Battle of Berlin was a desperate defense. The Bf-109 seconds, though outnumbered and increasingly worn out, were tasked with intercepting the American bombers and shooting them down before they could reach their targets. German pilots, many of them inexperienced and hastily trained, faced off against seasoned Allied pilots who had been flying in combat for years. Despite being outmatched in terms of technology and numbers, the Bf-109 pilots fought fiercely, knowing that this battle could determine the fate of their nation. The skies over Berlin became a deadly game of cat and mouse. As the bombers neared their targets, the Luftwaffe scrambled every available aircraft to intercept them. The Bf-109 seconds would climb into the sky, engaging the P-51 seconds in brutal dogfights. The P-51 seconds, with their superior speed and agility, often had the upper hand. But the Bf-109 seconds fought tooth and nail, using their experience in tight turns and high-speed dives to try and shake the Mustang escorts. The dogfights were intense, with both sides suffering heavy losses. The P-51 Mustangs, thanks to their long range, could remain in the air much longer than the Bf-109 seconds, allowing them to engage German fighters over the target area and well into the retreat. The Bf-109 seconds, on the other hand, often had to return to base quickly to refuel and rearm, limiting their time in the fight. For the German pilots, the odds were increasingly stacked against them. As the war neared its end, the Luftwaffe was plagued by shortages of fuel, parts, and experienced pilots. The once proud German Air Force was a shadow of its former self, unable to match the might of the Allies. Still, the pilots of the Bf-109 did their duty, facing their fate with courage and determination even as the inevitable collapse of their homeland loomed. The P-51 Mustangs, on the other hand, were an embodiment of the Allied air superiority that had been forged over years of relentless fighting. With their high speed, long range, and firepower, they were a formidable foe for the Germans. They had proven their worth in countless engagements, and in the skies over Berlin, they would play a pivotal role in breaking the back of the Luftwaffe's defenses. The battle over Berlin marked the end of an era. The Luftwaffe, once feared for its power and precision, had been overwhelmed by the technological superiority and relentless pressure of the Allied forces. As the last German fighters were shot down, the P-51 seconds continued their escort mission, ensuring the success of the bombers and delivering a final blow to the heart of Nazi Germany. The Battle of Berlin wasn't just a technological showdown between two iconic aircraft. It was also a deeply personal experience for the men in the cockpits. Both the German and Allied pilots were acutely aware that their fates were intertwined with the outcome of these sky-high duels. For many, it was a battle of survival, one that would determine not only the fate of their countries, but also their own lives. On the Allied side, pilots flying the P-51 Mustang were often seasoned veterans who had experienced the brutal reality of aerial combat. Many had seen their friends and comrades fall in dogfights or during bombing runs. These pilots were acutely aware of the risks they faced, but they also understood the stakes. For them, the skies over Berlin represented the final push toward victory, a final act in a war that had already cost millions of lives. Take, for instance, Bill Overstreet, a P-51 Mustang pilot who would later become one of the most celebrated American aces. Overstreet flew numerous missions over Europe, and his most famous encounter came during the Battle of Berlin. As he and his fellow pilots escorted a group of B-17 bombers, they were intercepted by a squadron of Bf-109 seconds. In the chaos of the dogfight, Overstreet managed to score multiple kills, but it wasn't just his skills that made him stand out. It was his unwavering focus and commitment to his comrades. He knew that the success of the mission depended not only on his skill in combat, but also on the trust he placed in his fellow pilots. For the German pilots, the situation was different. As the war dragged on, the WWII Luftwaffe had suffered immense losses, and many of the pilots sent to defend Berlin were inexperienced and untrained. Some were as young as 17, barely out of adolescence, and thrust into the cockpit of the Bf-109, facing the daunting task of protecting their homeland from overwhelming odds. They knew that they were flying in a losing battle, but they fought nonetheless. There was no retreat, no surrender, only the grim reality of the fight ahead. One such pilot was Heinz Nock, a veteran of the Luftwaffe who had already seen his fair share of combat by the time the Battle of Berlin came around. Nock had fought in the skies over Britain and the Eastern Front, but he found himself fighting in an increasingly hopeless struggle by the time he reached Berlin. His personal journals reveal the emotional toll the war took on him. He often expressed feelings of exhaustion and resignation, yet, like many of his comrades, he continued to fly, driven by duty, fear, and a deep sense of loyalty to his country. In one of his final missions, Nock took off in his Bf-109 to engage Allied bombers. The skies over Berlin were filled with the roar of engines, the deafening sound of machine gun fire, and the fiery explosions of aircraft being shot down. Nock's Bf-109 was damaged in combat, but he managed to limp back to base, a testament to the strength and resilience of both the aircraft and its pilot. Yet despite his skill and bravery, the odds were stacked against him, and he knew that the Luftwaffe was rapidly losing its ability to resist the Allied onslaught. The personal stakes were high for both sides, and the cost of this aerial warfare was steep. Each dogfight, each split-second decision, had the potential to change the course of the battle. For the German pilots, many of whom were fighting not only for their country but also for their lives, the encounter was a harsh reminder of the futility of their cause. For the Allied pilots, the Battle of Berlin was a final push to secure victory, a chance to end the war and bring their comrades home. Despite their differences, the men in the cockpits shared a common bond, a bond forged in the heat of battle, where every second counted and survival was never guaranteed. In the end, the fate of these pilots, whether they flew the Bf-109 or the P-51 Mustang, was sealed by the outcome of the war. But their stories, their bravery, and their sacrifices would remain etched in history, a testament to the human cost of aerial combat. As the skies over Berlin filled with the deafening roar of combat, the technology behind the Messerschmitt Bf-109 and the P-51 Mustang played a pivotal role in determining the outcome of every dogfight. Both aircraft were the finest examples of their respective nations' engineering, but their design philosophies and strengths in battle were strikingly different. The question was, which of these two iconic fighters would prove superior in the heat of combat over the crumbling heart of Nazi Germany? The Bf-109 was a product of German ingenuity, designed to be fast, agile, and highly effective at intercepting enemy bombers. Its compact design, powered by the Daimler-Benz DB605 engine, made it an excellent dogfighter in the early years of the war. Its wings were narrow and sharp, giving it excellent speed and climb rate, which were crucial in quick hit-and-run attacks. The Bf-109 could easily outturn most Allied fighters, a trait that made it deadly in close-quarters combat. This was crucial in the Battle of Britain and other early engagements, when the Bf-109's ability to get in close, strike, and then break away before the enemy could react gave it a lethal edge. However, by the time the Bf-109 seconds engaged in the final aerial defense of Berlin, the aircraft's limitations were becoming clear. The cramped cockpit, while a design advantage in terms of visibility, left little room for the pilot to move, which made long missions particularly exhausting. Moreover, as German engineers faced mounting shortages of raw materials and experienced personnel, the aircraft's reliability began to deteriorate. Many Bf-109 seconds in the later stages of the war had been patched together from older airframes and were often in less than ideal condition, which further complicated the Luftwaffe's efforts to defend against the relentless Allied bombing campaigns. On the other hand, the P-51 Mustang represented the epitome of Allied air superiority in the European theater. Initially, the aircraft had been a simple design to fulfill the needs of the British Royal Air Force. However, it was the installation of the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine that truly unlocked the P-51's potential. This engine transformed the Mustang from a decent fighter into a long-range, high-speed powerhouse capable of escorting bombers into the heart of Germany itself. The P-51's sleek design made it extremely aerodynamic. With a top speed of 437 miles per hour and a combat range of over 1,600 miles, it could accompany the bombers deep into enemy territory and protect them from German interceptors. The P-51's long-range capabilities gave it the edge over the Bf-109, which often had to turn back once it had expended its fuel or if it faced tough opposition from the Allied escorts. The Mustang's 6 .50 caliber Browning M2 machine guns provided immense firepower, enabling it to take on enemy aircraft with devastating effectiveness. Its superb maneuverability at high speeds, combined with its great stability during combat, made it an ideal aircraft for engaging the Bf-109 seconds in the skies above Berlin. Another key advantage the P-51 held was its ability to remain in the air longer. This was crucial during the Berlin raids. where the P-51 pilots could stay with the bombers as long as necessary, ensuring that the German interceptors were kept at bay. This extended endurance allowed the P-51 seconds to play a vital role in ensuring the success of the bombing missions, something the Bf-109 could not match, as its operational range was significantly shorter. Despite these advantages, the Bf-109 was still a formidable adversary. The German aircraft's excellent climb rate allowed it to engage Allied fighters at high altitudes, where it could quickly make the most of its superior turning ability. However, when it came to speed and endurance, the Bf-109 found itself increasingly outmatched by the P-51 Mustang, whose technological superiority would prove decisive in the air battles over Berlin. In a direct confrontation, the P-51 Mustang's ability to outpace and outlast the Bf-109, combined with its superior firepower and overall design, made it the more effective aircraft in the later stages of the war. However, the Bf-109's dogfighting prowess and its pilot's experience meant that no confrontation was ever guaranteed, and both sides had to rely on every ounce of skill and determination they could muster. In the skies above Berlin, the battle was more than just a technological contest. It was a fight for survival. The P-51 Mustang, with its advanced design and longer range, would eventually overwhelm the aging Bf-109 seconds. But for the German pilots, the Bf-109 was their last stand, their final attempt to hold back the inevitable tide of defeat. The technological superiority of the P-51 was undeniable, but in the end, it was the courage of the men flying both aircraft that truly determined the outcome. As the dust settled over Berlin, the fate of the Luftwaffe had been sealed. The skies above the city, once fiercely defended by the Bf-109, were now dominated by the relentless American P-51 Mustang. The Battle of Berlin marked the end of an era for the German Air Force, and in many ways, the conclusion of their ability to contest Allied air superiority in Europe. For the German pilots, the loss of Berlin was symbolic of the larger collapse of the Third Reich. The Luftwaffe, which had once been one of the most powerful air forces in the world, was now reduced to desperate resistance in a war already lost. Despite their skill and bravery, the German pilots were outmatched, outnumbered, and under-resourced. The once feared Bf-109, though still a capable fighter, could not overcome the superior range, speed, and firepower of the P-51 Mustang. The P-51 Mustang's success in the skies over Berlin was not just a military victory, it was a turning point in the broader conflict. With the destruction of the Luftwaffe's ability to protect its cities and infrastructure, the Allies were free to carry out their strategic bombing campaigns with impunity. The devastation of Berlin, coupled with the weakening of German resistance, contributed directly to the rapid collapse of Nazi Germany in the spring of 1945. The legacy of the P-51 Mustang was solidified during the Battle of Berlin. Not only had it proven itself as an excellent bomber escort, but its role in crippling the Luftwaffe's ability to defend German territory was undeniable. The Mustang became the symbol of American air superiority, and its unmatched performance in combat ensured that it would be remembered as one of the greatest fighters of the war. In contrast, the Bf-109's legacy is one of a great fighter that had once dominated the skies, but ultimately became a symbol of the declining fortunes of Nazi Germany. It was a versatile aircraft that had been involved in nearly every major battle of the war, but by the time it faced the P-51 Mustang, it was outdated and struggling against a new generation of fighters. Despite its decline, the Bf-109's role in the early years of the war cannot be underestimated. It had been a key player in the Battle of Britain, the invasion of the Soviet Union, and countless other engagements. Its pilots were among the most skilled in the world, and the aircraft's reputation as a deadly adversary remained intact even as the war neared its end. As the war in Europe came to a close, both aircraft left behind a legacy that would shape the future of aviation. The P-51 Mustang, with its combination of speed, firepower, and range, set the standard for future fighter aircraft. It was a symbol of the power of technological innovation and strategic thinking, an example of how the right weapon could tip the balance in the most critical moments of battle. The Bf-109, on the other hand, was a reminder of the dangers of stagnation. While it had been an exceptional aircraft in its prime, it had not evolved fast enough to keep up with the rapidly changing dynamics of modern warfare. The decline of the Bf-109 mirrored the collapse of the Luftwaffe and ultimately the defeat of Nazi Germany. It served as a reminder that even the most advanced technologies can be overcome when not paired with the resources and innovation necessary to sustain them. For those who flew both aircraft, the Battle of Berlin was the final test. The P-51 pilots had proven their mettle in one of the most crucial air campaigns of the war, while the Bf-109 pilots, despite the overwhelming odds, fought bravely to the end. Their stories would become legends, passed down through the years as a testament to the courage, skill, and sacrifice of the men who flew in these iconic aircraft. By the time the last dogfights had concluded over the battered city of Berlin, the outcome was no longer in question. The P-51 Mustang had proven its supremacy, and the Bf-109, despite its valiant efforts, had been unable to withstand the relentless assault from Allied air power. With each passing day, the skies over Berlin had become a microcosm of the larger war effort, a contest of strength, speed, and survival. As the air war drew to its close, the question that lingered in the minds of many was what had these aircraft truly meant to the war, to the men who flew them, and to the history of aerial combat. For the Allies, the success of the P-51 Mustang was not just about defeating the German fighters, it was about securing the future. The Mustang's long-range capability and firepower had become a vital asset in the American Air Force's arsenal, and it would remain an important part of American air power long after the war. The Mustang's involvement in the Battle of Berlin was a final statement of victory. Its ability to escort bombers into the heart of enemy territory and to challenge German fighters head-on ensured that the Allies would have the air superiority needed to finish the war and secure a lasting peace. But the Mustang's legacy is also a testament to the skill of its pilots. For men like Bill Overstreet, who faced down the relentless challenge of German interceptors day after day, the Mustang was a symbol of both their personal determination and the broader Allied war effort. The aircraft's capabilities were unmatched, but it was the men who flew it who put their lives on the line to protect the bombers, to engage the enemy, and to press forward against overwhelming odds that truly defined its success. On the German side, the Bf-109 had a different story to tell. It was the weapon of choice for the Luftwaffe in the early years of the war, a symbol of German technological prowess and military might. But as the war dragged on and the German military began to crumble, the Bf-109's age became evident. Pilots like Heinz Nock, who had flown the Bf-109's numerous battles, found themselves increasingly outmatched by the superior firepower and endurance of the Allied fighters. Despite its faults, the Bf-109 remained a respected adversary, a symbol of the Germans' refusal to surrender, even when defeat seemed inevitable. The Battle of Berlin, then, was not just the final air battle between two iconic aircraft. It was a battle for the skies, for survival, and for the legacy of those who fought within them. It was a battle fought by men who, regardless of which side they were on, knew that their survival depended on their ability to adapt, to outthink, and to outfly their opponents. In the end, as Berlin lay in ruins, and the war in Europe came to its inevitable conclusion, both the P-51 Mustang and the Bf-109 had left their marks on history. One was a symbol of Allied victory, a powerful weapon that had helped bring down Nazi Germany. The other was a symbol of a lost cause, a fighter that had once been the pride of the Luftwaffe but had ultimately been overwhelmed by the sheer might of the Allies. For the pilots who flew these aircraft, the Battle of Berlin was their final test. It was a fight not just for air superiority, but for survival. And as they took to the skies one last time, they knew that their actions would shape the future of warfare, leaving a legacy that would be remembered for generations to come. The Battle of Berlin, though fought in the final days of World War II, remains one of the most defining moments in the history of aerial combat. It was here, in the skies above the shattered city, that two of the most legendary fighters of the war, the Messerschmitt Bf-109 and the P-51 Mustang, met in a final, decisive struggle. Each aircraft was a product of its nation's engineering, a reflection of the differing paths the Axis and Allied forces had taken. And in their clash over Berlin, both became symbols of the war that had torn Europe apart. The P-51 Mustang, with its superior speed, range, and firepower, proved to be the decisive weapon in the final phase of the conflict. It was the perfect solution to the Allied bombing campaigns, providing the necessary protection to American bombers deep into enemy territory. It was more than just a fighter. It was the tool that helped secure victory for the Allies and end the war in Europe. The Bf-109, on the other hand, while showing its age by the time it met the P-51 inches combat, represented the legacy of the German Luftwaffe. It had been a dominant force in the early years of the war. Its pilots feared across Europe for their skill and precision. But by the time it reached the skies over Berlin, it was an aircraft pushed to its limits, its pilots fighting not only for survival, but for the very soul of their nation. The Bf-109 story is one of evolution of a machine that had to adapt to the changing nature of warfare, and of a fighter that had to endure even as its world was collapsing around it. Both aircraft had their moments of glory and defeat, but it was the men who flew them that truly defined the Battle of Berlin. The German pilots, many of whom were veterans, but others too young or inexperienced to fully grasp the gravity of their mission, flew with determination and courage. They knew that every mission could be their last, and they pressed on, driven by duty and the hope of protecting their homeland. The P-51 Mustang pilots, on the other hand, fought with the certainty that the end was near. Their mission was clear: protect the bombers, defeat the Luftwaffe, and bring the war to an end. They flew over Berlin not just for the sake of victory, but to ensure that the horrors of war would finally be over. In the aftermath of the battle, Berlin was a city in ruins, but the skies had been cleared. The Luftwaffe had been broken, and with it, the German resistance to the Allies. The P-51 Mustang, having proven its worth in the skies above Berlin, would go on to become one of the most iconic aircraft of the war, a symbol of American technological superiority and the victory that had been fought for across the world. For the pilots who flew both the Bf-109 and the P-51 Mustang, the Battle of Berlin was a moment in history that would never be forgotten. It was a test of their skill, their courage, and their resolve. It was a final, epic clash of two aircraft that had come to represent the very essence of the war. As the sun set over Berlin, the last dogfights had ended, and the battle was won. The world had changed, and the legacy of the P-51 Mustang and the Bf-109 would live on, not just in the history of aerial combat, but in the stories of the men who flew them and the sacrifices they made to shape the future of the world. If you love the video, please like, subscribe, and share the video. If you have any opinions, comment below.